right now, as we're recording, it's incredibly challenging for people to get their long outdoor rides done. We've spoken to dozens of athletes between us over the last couple of weeks around the challenges that they're having. So we thought we'd jump on this, and it'll be a great opportunity to essentially give you the benefit of our coaching wisdom around how to get your long rides done during the winter time that doesn't default to you saying either, I can't get the long ride done because the weather's terrible, or I can't get it done because it's too long to do on Zwift, or I just tried to do an outdoor ride and it was just too cold and unpleasant to do that. So there's tons and tons of tips we can give you that we've picked up along the way. And we were reflecting, weren't we? A lot of this stuff is only obvious if you've been in the sport for a long time and you've done this year in, year out, and you've ridden your bike to work and you've ridden every Sunday since you were 14 years old in some cases. So let's talk on this to start with, Chris. I think the most important place to start is the how and the why of why the long, easy, aerobic, conversational weekly ride is so important to athletes who are racing any distance, from sprint distance duathlon all the way through to Ironman.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Before we get into the how we do it, we need to understand the why. And once you understand the why, I think you're more likely to get outside the door when times are challenging with the weather. Doing a 3-hour easy ride in the summer is very different to doing a 3-hour easy in January in the UK. And, I feel that I can relate to the athletes on this because I'm essentially going through the same thing with my own training. And every time I get on the bike, I feel that I'm gutted that some of the athletes that I'm coaching and that we talk to in Circle and, all our team athletes, I'm gutted that they're not having the same experience because they've come across a barrier that is stopping them from getting out on the bike on that kind of weekly basis. So in the next few minutes, if we can get one or two people out that are keen to get out, but there's a barrier in the way, then I think we're going to be really happy as coaches knowing that we've helped one or two along the way.
Yeah, totally. So athletes we coach, it's really targeted at people who are really struggling to get the long ride done, even though they want to. Athletes that we maybe don't coach, we've had, loads of emails through and comments on YouTube in the past few weeks. So thank you very much if that's you that sent any of those through. A little interjection here. If you haven't liked and subscribed on YouTube at the moment, if you could do that, that'd be a massive help for us and for the channel, because we're really trying to grow essentially the amount of good, compassionate coaching advice that's out there at the moment. So if you're watching on YouTube right now, like and subscribe. If you've listened to the podcast, go to YouTube and like and subscribe later on. That'll help us as well. So to come back to this then, Chris, the main reason that we want to get the long outdoor aerobic ride done, why is it so important during winter for athletes when we've traditionally always talked about we're doing reverse periodization and we're making people train really hard on the bike during the winter, and then there's a possibly seeming it doesn't quite fit in with that philosophy that we've still got a long aerobic ride and a long aerobic run in there. So let's talk about what they're there for.
Yeah, and this, I'm quite keen to not make it overly complicated to the point where it becomes alienating, but essentially the vast majority of our athletes at the moment are going through an FTP build phase. And so that means that over 2, call it key sessions during the week, they're really working hard, mostly indoors on Zwift or equivalent, which we fully support, during the week. Most people have got jobs and you've got that hour, and it's an hour of power where you need to get as much of your physical output as possible out during that time. So it makes total sense to do that indoors. But these 2 rides that you're doing on a weekly basis really need to be supported by a big aerobic ride. And if you take out that aerobic ride, or if you highly edit it and cut it in half or even less, then the overall package of your FTP, call it 16 weeks, has been massively compromised. And the idea is that once you come out of this phase of training, your FTP has risen, but at the same time, your aerobic base, your aerobic foundation is large enough to benefit from that increased ceiling. And so if we're only going to work on our FTP and any other ride is kind of symbolic and very short, that's fine, but you can't expect your overall triathlon package to improve because we're in an endurance sport, and therefore our aerobic capacity is kind of fundamental. So, you know, for me personally, I'd love to see an athlete tick off the 2 FTP rides and give it 100%. But then when it comes to that weekend ride, you've got to see it on the same kind of priority list. It's there to be done. It's not just that we're trying to fill your week with some aerobic exercise just to keep you moving. This is a crucial element of your training. So Rob, I don't know, you know, you've got years and years and years of experience coaching athletes. How do you get the athlete to understand that FTP, of course, is crucial, but that aerobic ride is there for a reason?
Yeah, so the way I've always broken this down is, if we use the analogy of a car, the FTP sessions that you're doing during the winter are there to make the engine size bigger. The weekend aerobic rides are there to essentially make your fuel supply more efficient. And if we break it to its very basic physiological facts, what you're doing by going out and doing a long, steady aerobic conversational ride is you're gradually increasing your body's ability to use fat as a fuel rather than carbohydrate. And there's a really interesting thing happens. If you look at the science and literature around this, if you progressively get somebody to ride a little bit harder and a little bit harder, the body will start off, you know, riding really easy, and they'll mainly be using fat as a fuel. If you get beyond a certain threshold, the fat doesn't keep getting used as a fuel. It gradually tails off and we switch over into a carbohydrate mainly or entirely mechanism. So the FTP sessions are fantastic for doing what they're aimed to do, which is make your engine size bigger, make you more powerful, make you stronger on the bike. But the aerobic ride is there to make sure that we can burn fat as a fuel. And if you don't get those done, especially if you're a long distance athlete, you're going to be missing a massive, massive part. Now, modern society is not going to like this. Tim Ferriss is not going to like this. There is no hack to this. There is no way to make it work shorter. There is no way to get a 3-hour ride done in 1 hour. You need to be hanging out at or about the point where your body is using fat to its maximum ability. And that's what we describe as like a zone 2 ride, the sort of the mid to top of zone 2 in your heart rate, or 65% of FTP. That's where your body is maximally using its fat. And because it's doing that, it's getting more efficient at it, and it will gradually be able to produce more energy from the same amount of effort from your point of view. If you don't hang out there, if you go for a group ride and you blast up hills and you race each other and you sprint all the time, you can as good as turn off your fat supply, and your body never gets better at doing that. So if you're an athlete who finds that you've got to take tons and tons and tons of food when you're out on the long ride, that's a bit of a lead to you that the long ride isn't having the effect that we want it to do. So especially, to summarize, especially for long distance triathletes, that is a really important ride to get done week in and week out. So let's address the ways athletes can either get out of the door when it's safe to do so, or to, and people are going to hate us for this, to find a way to get that ride done indoors on Zwift as well. Let's kick off with that.
So my kind of starting point is when I open the curtains in the morning, I'm saying to myself, I'm going to go out. And then I'm opening the curtains to see how I need to adapt my clothing or whatever it might be to make sure that I can still go out. So you open the curtains, you know it's safe. There's absolutely no signs of ice. The wind is below 40 miles an hour, which is at the point where it starts to get really dodgy. Other than that, me personally, as long as you've got the right kit,
getting it done.
You're absolutely fine. You can get it done. So
I'm going to interject, mate, there just for a second, because you say your ride starts when you get up in the morning. I'd actually advise athletes to make their long ride start the night before. And the most important thing this time of year is that you do not have a catastrophic accident caused by ice. And so checking the weather forecast, if it's looking like it's going to go under 3 degrees overnight, there's a very good chance that out in the countryside, it'll be even colder and there might be ice on the road. And that's the point I'm going to say to people, look, let's divide this into 2 sections. We're absolutely going to get you out of the door if it's safe to do so. But if there's any chance of ice on the roads, my advice is don't even risk it in the slightest. And people are going to laugh at me for this, but I've been in the sport a long time. I've had friends have literally catastrophic life-changing accidents caused by dry ice, one very recently actually, and it is just not worth the risk. So there's my first thing. If it's going to happen, check the forecast from the day before. And then, in the morning, okay, well, if it was 3 degrees overnight, scratch it and you're on the turbo. But you're dead right. Let's say that the forecast is above that. It's going to be chilly. It's going to be unpleasant. It's going to be windy. It's going to be rainy. Guess what? You're living in Great Britain in the wintertime. Talk us through your process.
Exactly. So assuming it's between 5 and 10 degrees, as Rob just said, if you can get everything set up the night before, you're already halfway there. So get all your electronics charged up so you don't have that excuse. You've got your route on your computer, that's all sorted. So the bike is ready to go. You've got your water bottle sorted. You've got your nutrition. So literally all you have to do is put on the correct clothing, have your breakfast, and you're out the door. And I personally, I started the year off, the first kind of few rides, I fell into the trap of not doing that. And I'll just sort it out in the morning. I'd rather have half an hour, relaxing with my partner, whatever it is. But actually, if you can, just before bed, sort that out, it makes a massive difference. And then secondly, when you open the curtains, you're just looking for that information of, do I wear A, B, or C? It's not, should I ride or not? Because you've already made that decision. It's going to be perfectly safe. So then it's about, I kind of break it up into 3 categories of temperature. And depending on that temperature, I adapt. So when it's, around that 5 degrees, to me, that's going to be the coldest I ride in. And I know exactly what my clothing is for, call it 5 to 8 degrees. I know exactly what I've got. I've got a little drawer sorted. I get those winter gloves, the winter tights, the winter base layer, the winter jacket, all of it, the overshoes. So I know what that is. When it goes from like 8 to 10 degrees, there's kind of that midpoint where if I wore all that kind of heavy winter kit, I'm going to start sweating, and that's actually what's going to cause me to get cold, because the sweat is just going to make my core temperature colder, and it gets really uncomfortable when you have that horrible sweaty feel. So then I've got lighter winter kit, and then you go into the 10 and above. And to me, you're getting very close to...
That's normal riding, isn't it? I think
exactly.
You've got to think of it like that. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that can be very light kind of clothing choices. So some of the stuff that has really helped me in my kind of winter riding experience has been start with the extremities, so toes and hands. When they're cold, the rest of the body feels cold. So if you can address those 2 things, big time. So for me, a kind of, I'm going to try and not use brand names, but a winter. Do you know
what? I don't think that's a bad thing. If you know if you know a really good product that's worked for you, I'm all in favor. Although, like, full disclosure, we're not sponsored or affiliated or whatever, but if you've got that great thing that works for you, go for it, mate.
Okay, great. Because that really helps, because I feel as if I've been through so much winter kit.
Yeah, totally. Save everybody out there the problem of looking for it.
Exactly. And so these aren't the only brands that I would encourage, it's just the ones that have worked for me. So I've leaned to the UK company called Spats, and they are kind of specialists in winter kit. They're from Yorkshire, and they know their stuff. Their winter rain glove is kind of like a neoprene outer glove. So when your hand's in it, it completely retains all the heat from your hand, and it might get a little bit sweaty and cloggy, but you'll never get cold in it. So whether it's snowing, raining, freezing wind, whatever it is, your hand is going to stay warm, and that's an absolute game changer. And on top of that, it keeps dexterity. So if you go for a real thick lined glove with all sorts of features in it, your hands on the brakes are going to feel very strange, and you're going to struggle to change gear. So if you can keep that dexterity, it goes a long way. So hands crucial. Same goes with feet. I'm going to talk about Spats again because they were the game changer for me. And I even use they look silly, but they work. It's a neoprene overshoe that doesn't just cover the kind of ankle area, it goes all the way up to the knee.
And so I've seen these. I've never worn them, but I've seen them, and they're so highly regarded. It's
amazing. And the idea behind it is obviously less moisture is going to get in because it's further away from the external point of the shoe, but also when it covers your calf, it means that the blood that's circulating to your foot is already warm, as opposed to cold blood pumping around your feet. So for me, that's been a total game changer. It's been absolutely brilliant. So if you can nail those two elements, and it's worth investing. I know, times are tricky for people, and spending a load of money isn't always the most exciting thing. But if you can spend a little bit of extra money on these two elements, it's going to go a long way.
Yeah, 100%. And I think other things for people to think about when they're riding in the wintertime is always, always, always carry with you some kind of hat or skull cap, or even, people are going to laugh at this, but even an old swimming cap in your back pocket. And I literally do this all the way from September all the way through to the end of March. It's just in my back pocket. It's either an old swimming cap or it's one of those Castelli skull cap things that take up virtually no room. The difference that can make if you get caught in a rain shower of just not getting your head wet. I think the big challenge is the wind chill factor, isn't it? Once you get wet, if you're out and it's 5 degrees and it's dry and sunny, that's one thing. If it then clouds over and it then starts raining, you can feel 10, 12 degrees colder even. So that's the absolute important thing, is being able to look after yourself and get yourself home, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I got caught in this actually, Rob. I feel like a bit of a joker giving all this advice, even though yesterday on Sunday, I made the schoolboy error. I went on a long ride.
We all do it.
I got a double puncture, which I've never had in years, on tubeless tyres. Glass went straight through both of them. And so I was fixing it and then got this horrible hailstorm. And I checked the weather in the morning and it said very low likelihood of rain. So I thought, I'll save a bit of weight and make more room in my pockets and not take a specific rain jersey. And oh my God, I regretted it. I was there for half an hour trying to sort this bloody puncture out. And I just wish I had that extra layer while I was staying on the side of the road. So I think it's safe to assume, or especially in the UK, always take a rain jacket of some sort. You never know if you're caught in an emergency or a mechanical, or you can help someone else. Or, it's my lesson. I'm definitely going to take that now. Absolutely.
Well, I've got an old written training diary from probably 2004, and on the front page it says in massive block capitals, always take a rain jersey. And my lesson came riding through the Peak District in July, and went out in short sleeves, rode over the other side of the Peak District. Who knew? Weather completely changed and I was absolutely drenched and freezing. And it's like, you just can't afford not to. So a really good, I love Gore-Tex Pack Light. I love Gore-Tex. The new version is called Shake Dry, isn't it?
Shake Dry is brilliant. Yeah.
I haven't worn that, but friends who've had them have said it's just amazing. It wraps up really small, less than a pocket full in your back jersey. It's absolute no-brainer to have. And I think that the skull cap in your back pocket all the time are really things that will make the big difference. Hey, have you ever used those toe warmers and hand warmers? The ones that you get in hiking stores where you crack them and use those?
I haven't actually personally used them. I know a lot of people from various clubs that I've been part of do rave about them, but to be honest, I've never felt the need, because I've always
Your gloves
invested.
are so good. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always invested in the right kind of glove for me, and so therefore I haven't felt the need. I literally don't get cold.
That's amazing.
The only thing stopping me is ice. It's not the cold that's putting me off. It's the risk of, black ice around the corner that puts me off.
Well, that's something people might want to try. They only cost a couple of pounds from an outdoor shop, and you can have one of those in your back pocket. And if you do get really cold, riding with my partner, she really suffers with cold hands, and I usually have one in my back pocket, and then I can stick it in one of her gloves and she can swap it over, and that's got us home on a couple of occasions. So, good. I think we've covered almost everything on our kit list there. We haven't talked about glasses as the last thing, isn't it? And I think it's not an obvious thing during the winter time to think about glasses, but clear lensed glasses or even yellow lensed glasses, they're really good at keeping the grit and the crap out of your eyes if you're riding with others and the spray coming up. So that would be another thing I'd recommend people to have, glasses all year round. Yeah.
Talking of spray coming up, mud guards. I don't care how high performance your bike is, and I love a race bike and I love all the kind of aero gadgets that go with the race bike, but this is January, February, March in the UK. Make your bike as slow as possible. None of the coaches are going to be opening your data and looking for average speed. It's just irrelevant at this stage. We're looking at heart rate, we're looking at power, we're looking at perceived effort. Speed is irrelevant. So put on some mud guards. That's going to keep your back dry in all conditions, and a mud guard on the front is going to keep the spray in your face. It also means you can team up with someone else if you're looking for that social element. But on top of that, if you've got a really nice bike, protect it. So you're going to protect your bottom bracket. You're going to protect all the bearings, and you're going to protect the grease that wraps around those in your headset and all those things. So look after your bike, look after yourself. So get mud guards. It's an amazing investment.
Well, I think this is a good point to talk about how to winterize your bike, because I think that the best option here is having a whole separate bike for the winter. And not everyone's going to have that. But if you do, if you have a winter bike, you can keep set up with mud guards and winter tires and all that on all year round. Perfect. But if not, I think there's a few things people can do to their really nice bike to protect it. The first one, like you said, is getting mud guards on. The second one is I'm a big softie. I always change my wheels for the winter. My nice carbon wheels stay inside wrapped up during the winter, and I put a pair of old school iron rims on. They're not actually iron, but the gator skin tires. I even run slime inner tubes all the way through winter, and then it really helps reduce that risk of getting punctures, because it's stopping and having to change them that makes you really, really cold, isn't it? So mud guards, winter tires, puncture protection if you can possibly get it. They're all really good, aren't they?
Yeah, a big one for me is when you're thinking tires, think the wider the better. So, you're going to have to look up on your specific bike the amount of space that you've got between your brake calipers if you're using rim brakes. But for example, for me, I'm riding it's a gravel bike, but it's essentially a road bike that allows bigger clearances. So at the moment, I've got 35mm tires on essentially a road bike, and I'm running the pressure at no higher than 30 psi at all times. Right. And it's just the greatest feeling. There's some enormous potholes that just come around a corner, and I know one's coming up. And if I was on 25mm tires, I'd be freaking out, having to slam the brakes on or go into the middle of the road. Whereas I know that these tires will take it. I'll go straight through a pothole if I have to. Everything's safe, everything's fine. And on top of that, I don't get the kind of rider fatigue from all the vibrations. And I know that that's important, but we're not in race specific season yet. Your race, sim weekends and all that will take care of the being in aero and being able to cope with the road vibrations and all that. But January, February, March, just look after yourself to the point where you're able to go and do the 3 hours or whatever's on your plan. And for me, running low pressures, wide tires, and ideally tubeless it's an absolute game changer as well.
Yeah, and I can back that up. I changed to running tubeless after our conversation in the summer, and the difference it's made to my neck soreness, shoulder soreness on long rides just from the lack of vibration is massive. So I can imagine that the super wide tires for wintertime and really low pressures are a massive, massive bonus. It's really good, Chris.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, listen, I think we've just about used up all our time for this episode today, mate. So if anyone else has got any other questions they want to fire across to us about winter riding, then you can either forward them through to help@oxygenaddict.com, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can drop a comment down there and we'll answer it down there for you. Remember, please like and subscribe to the channel for more of these tips. We'll have loads more of them coming out. And if you've got any ideas for episodes that you'd like for us to cover, just let us know and we'll get those done for you. But from me and Chris, thanks very much for watching, and we'll catch up with another episode of the Oxygen Addict podcast with you soon.